I'm going to talk to you about the nitty-gritty of how to write grants. So as far as grants go, currently I have $6.4 million in external funding, which Joe tells me is the most of anybody on this campus. So I have a lot of money already. Number two, I was the Vice Chancellor for Research up until 2014, so I oversaw all of the grants. I would have been Joe's boss if he came in after I already had left. And so I oversaw that. And number three is last night I just got back from a National Science Foundation panel where I was the chair of the panel and made recommendations to give away about $15 million. So I have background in being able to write successful grants. I can tell you everything about how the process works. And as I said, I used to oversee the whole thing for this campus. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to kind of go through how do you do, what do we really want to do to get a grant? And I will tell you right now, it's not easy. It is extremely difficult to get grants. You know, right now I'm kind of in the groove, but look, I'm going to be 61 this year. Believe me, it took me many years to get to the point where I could write very successful grants right off the bat. They're hard. It's hard to get grants, so you just have to kind of give it your best shot and understand what the limitations are going to be, and just keep going at it. And it requires probably more, hard work and sticking with it, being able to stick with it more than anything else. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to just start going into all of the stuff. So this is kind of an old slide, just to show you where the federal sources of money are. I used to use this, as I said, when I was a vice chancellor, so it only goes up to like 2010 or something. So you can see the money for grants has gone up every year. Now, I don't know what will happen with the Trump administration, whether that'll start to go back down again, but up to this point, that's where kind of a lot of non-federal, all sources, you can see grants just keep going up. So there is more and more money. On the other hand, there's more and more people with their hands out. And it's really a big business because, you know, you go to a place like Johns Hopkins. Johns Hopkins brings in about $2 billion a year in external funding. So it's huge amounts. Michigan, I think, is number 2, which is at about $1.5 billion. So these are big. Even Rutgers is what, $600 and some million a year. So this is a real big business to bring in a lot of this money. So the big place, of course, is the federal budget, and that's where most of the money comes from. And NIH is the biggest. NSF is second, National Science Foundation. So NIH kind of focuses more on medical stuff. And so if you're non-medical and even things that kind of overlap medical, then you go to the National Science Foundation. My experience, I've got a lot of money from National Science Foundation. I've had money from EPA, and I've had a lot of money from states and also from foundations. So that's mostly where my experience is going to be. Okay, so we already talked to Joe. We have a new person now. Back in when I put this slide together, there were only Patricia was left around, but there are people over in the grants office, in the pre-awards office, who will help you to get that grant together. And the earlier you can get to them, the better off you are, because they're going to give you that guidance that you need to get to the point of actually being able to submit something. Okay, there's a bunch of resources on being able to find places, because the first thing you do is you got to find your source of where you're going to apply for money. They still have community science, or is that gone? Okay, community science is gone. This is old, as I said. Pivot is Pivot still around?
Pivot's gone.
Pivot's gone too? Never mind. Next. Anyway, there used to be sources. You're going to have to talk to Joe, can tell you all the sources of where you can look up places to find money. What's the newest one then?
This afternoon we're going to cover 3 databases.
Okay, so you guys are going to do the data. I don't have to go into that then.
Grad fund and...
All right, yeah, see they keep changing. Anyway, so there's places where you can, if you have an idea of what areas you want to go into, you can look up. And you got to find out where you're going to go early on. You don't want to just write a proposal out in the midair and then say, I'll find the source. You can't do that because everything has priorities and it has, guidelines and everything else and that. So you have to know where you're going to go ahead of time. You can't just write the great idea and have it funded. Okay, so how to be funded? What's the biggest thing to do? So first thing, you have to have a good idea. However, a good idea is not the only thing. So a lot of people kind of go into this and they say, oh, my science will speak for itself. Forget it. Science never speaks for itself. There's a whole game. This is a game, and believe me, it's one of the biggest games you'll ever want to play, is to be able to get yourself into the spot to get money. Okay, so you have to understand early on it's a game. Okay, so the first thing is you do need a good idea. So you have to have something that people are saying, wow, that's a great idea, and are willing to put money into it. So as I said, I just ran a panel. I was the chair. I had 10 other people from all over the country who sat down and read a bunch of proposals, and they decided who was going to get money and who wasn't. And first off is, there's something innovative in there? You got an idea? Yeah, okay. The second thing is, though, is it's not just good enough to have a good idea. They went through this, and even though you want to say, oh, it's the science speak for itself, all the people on the panel will go, oh, well, I know this person, and they do good work. And that, I know this person, and they do good work, is a big deal. It will make the changes between whether they'll or not. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. And one of them is that you want to make sure that somebody can actually spend the money and get something good out of it. So there's that part of it. But there's also the less nice part, is that, wow, you know, that person likes my stuff and they'll vote for me when they're on the panel next time, and so maybe I should support them because I know they support me. So there are underhanded things as well that go in here. So it's not just, ooh, I'm going to just kind of go into this open field. It's not. It's got a lot of politics in it. It's got a lot of diplomacy in it. You have to play the game. That's life. So you got to be recognized. So people have to know who you are. You can't just walk off the street and send in a proposal and nobody knows. They don't know who you are. Your chances of getting something off the street are terrible. Okay, so you need to be recognized. I recommend that if you're going to, and in your early parts of your career, start with somebody with a track record. And even when my assistant professors come to my department, the first thing I tell them is connect up with somebody who's already gotten grants. Okay, because if you connect with somebody who's already gotten grants and you're a co-PI on something, you then get your foot in the door. Because it's very hard to get your foot in the door if you know, basically that nobody knows you. And even if you write a couple of papers or things like that, it's a whole other area of the people that get grants. So start with people who already have grants, who have track records. Be creative with sources. Don't be fixed to one source. There may be other things available, and that's what's going to be talked about on these databases this afternoon. Keep your options open. Okay, so be creative. Don't think you're fixed to one place. Big thing. Follow all directions. We went through this over the past couple of days, and if people didn't put all the sections in they were supposed to, we just tossed them in the garbage, okay? Because that makes it easy. You got to give away this money. It's highly competitive. We have to have some way to cut them down to what we're going to fund and what we're not going to fund. You don't follow the directions, we don't have to give you any money, okay? We could just push you aside and go to the next ones. If you got an opportunity to meet with a program director, I recommend it, because you kind of get in with them and they will give you hints on what the panels do, and because behind the closed doors there's these panels that I just went on. You know, everything else is open, you're in the front, there's people are writing reviews, but then there's the panel, and the panel is this little secret thing where they really make the decisions. And the program director sits in on the panel. So they say, you know, the panel really were interested in this past time. And that will give you a little hint that that's really where things are trending. So you want to you got to kind of keep yourself in the game. It's a game. And so that's a big thing, is to talk to your program director, getting good with them. They will give you lots of good advice on how you can prepare a good proposal. Be persistent, because believe me, it's not going to be easy. Okay, you are going to get knocked down so many times. When I first came out of and started as a assistant professor here, and I worked at another college before this, and came here, I went for 8 years and couldn't get a single dime out of the National Science Foundation. a single dime for 8 straight years. Luckily, I had money from Department of Energy in the old days, but okay, thanks. But, you know, it took me a long time to get in my foot in the door and figure out, I'm giving you a lot of stuff that nobody told me. So it took me a long time to get my foot in the door. Now, you know, as I said, I've got 6.4 million, and I am the primary author on $6.4 million from the National Science Foundation, so, and others as well. Okay, so, you know, good ideas. So here's the first one, is you gotta have a good idea, right? So the first thing is you gotta keep current with other efforts. What are other people doing? So because you don't wanna reinvent. You come in and have an idea where somebody else is already doing it, and that's it. They will just throw it out. They say, well, we're already doing this at this place. All right. Unless you have some other spin on it, it's going to really cut you down. The next thing is people think that great, great innovative, earth-shattering ideas are what get funded. Wrong. Earth-shattering ideas do not get funded at all. So if you think that you're going to come up with some great new idea that nobody has thought of before, you guarantee you won't get money. How's that? Now you might think, wow, no, that's the way it is. Because all those people on the panel who you are telling, you guys don't know what you're talking about, this is the way things really work. What you're doing is wrong. They're the ones who are going to make the decision whether you get money or not. So you got to keep the psychology in mind as well. They're the ones who are going to say. So you basically have to recognize their contribution to what you're doing and say, wow, that's great stuff. All I want to do is take a half step from what everybody else thinks is going on. Now you may say, well, that's horrible. We're not going to fund these innovative stuff, this great stuff. Pretty much that's the way it goes. Okay, so if Albert Einstein came out with his theory of relativity and wrote a proposal to the National Science Foundation on that, he probably would get turned down. Okay, that's the way it goes. So getting money, you take a half a step from what the current thought is, and people you are recognizing everybody, and believe me, the vanity goes in with this. So you have to basically, acknowledge that their work is fantastic and is guiding what you're doing, and you're taking a half a step away, and that is how you get funded. It's a half a step. Even as I say, my assistant professors, when they would come in, I would help them get that first grant and say, look, hook up with somebody who already has money, who already is recognized, be a co-PI, then you can get your first PI grant, and then the first thing they want to do is to do something new. No, all you have recognition is in that one area. If I go outside of my usual parts of the NSF and try to write a grant, I'll get shot down because I'm an outsider, I'm a newcomer. You got to work your way into the area that you want, get some recognition, then you can get money. You can't just break into something and just because I had 6.4 million, I go to some other place, write a grant, a good grant, I'll get knocked down. I will not get it the first time I put it in. Guaranteed. Okay, so that's the way it goes. It's a game. Okay, so half a step. Next thing is, pick the best place in the world to do it. I had a friend of mine who was one of the rotators at NSF for a while, and he says, here's my advice. You want to study mountains, go to the Himalayas. Don't be studying the Adirondack Mountains if you really want to talk about how mountains are formed. Okay, so go to the best, make sure you can justify why what you're doing is the best place to do it. This is the best example. So this is why we'll be able to come up with, what we're doing. Okay. Next thing is you kind of want to have some preliminary data. You don't want to come in and say, I think this is going to be a great idea, but I have no data. You want to have something backing you up to say, all right, here's what I have and here's what I see. And so that's why I think if I move in this direction, which is a half a step from everybody else, then I think I'll get some money. Then I think I'll get some good stuff out. Okay, so need a reputation. All right, as I said, part of this is a reputation. So you got to publish your findings. Do not sit back on your stuff and wait to publish things. Get things out early. Attend meetings, at conferences. Make sure you're given abstracts, as many as you can. There's never too many abstracts that you can give. Make sure you make the rounds at the meetings. Know who the people are that you are the best people in your area that you're going to talk about. Go to their posters. Go to their talks. Raise your hand. Make sure they know who you are. Make the rounds. You've got to make a reputation. Get used to this anyway. If any of you are going to want to go into academia and be an assistant professor, you are going to have to be, at the end of those 6 years, you are going to have to come up for tenure. And tenure, like here, they ask for 10 letters from the top people in the business. That's how you get tenure. So they're going to write letters about you. And if they have no clue who you are or nothing what you've done, guaranteed they're not going to write a great letter. But you need 10 of them. So you have to really get out there. You got to put yourself out. And so to get money, you got to put yourself out as well. As I said, start as a co-PI, work with somebody who's already got it. And as a graduate student, you really can't be a PI on most things for NSF. You have to kind of be a co-PI, all right? Talk to the program director and start with small amounts. So kind of the two ways you can do this, the way I kind of did it is I banged my head against the wall. Nobody talked to me about being a co-PI. So I started off, I remember I was at Lafayette College my first year, and I wrote a grant proposal, an NSF proposal, and I sent mine in, and the guy next to me sent his in. I got 3 excellents and 2 very goods. He got 3 goods and 2 very goods. Guess who got money? He did. I got nothing, okay? Even though mine was rated so much higher than his, I had no reputation. I was going in on my own. Didn't work. Okay, and he got the money because he had the reputation. He'd already gotten money from NSF. That's kind of the way it goes. You have to understand the game, okay, to be able to really be successful at it. So, and then what I did, there's 2 ways of doing it. You go in with a co-PI, or you start with a very small amount of money and show them you can do something. So me, I was the dumb one. I started out with big amounts of money, and every year it got smaller and smaller and smaller. Till finally, I remember I got like $45,000. This was back in the, early 90s. So I got like $45,000 on my first grant. But I started out like at $250. By the time I got down to 45, then they gave it to me. So, since I wasn't going with a co-PI. But that's kind of the way it went. You either start with small amounts, or with a co-PI, as a co-PI with a seasoned researcher. That's the way to do it, I'm telling you. And I tell all my assistant professors, and our department does pretty well. It's not just the science. Don't think it is. This is a game. Okay, so pick your right source. Okay, NIH is the richest by far, but it's medical only, and those are big grants. And there's a lot of competition, so do not think that, NIH is easy because it's got more money than everybody else. It's not. It's very difficult to get NIH money. So it's not going to be any easier than NSF. For all other sciences, that are basic science, then, NSF is the one to go to. All right? And they're both about the same as difficult. Both of these are basic science, as opposed to, you guys know between applied versus basic sciences, right? So applied sciences where you're looking for a real outcome, whereas basic you just understand things. Okay, so NASA, NOAA, NIST, there's a bunch of others in here that are kind of mixes. You can do basic science, where you're, as I said, theoretical stuff as opposed to directly applied stuff. They're kind of a mix. Just depends on the program which you're into. Department of Energy, Department of Agriculture, Transportation, EPA, Department of Defense, pretty much all those are all applied. Sometimes you can get something that are a little bit basic in there or mixed, but most of the time these are applied things. You say, I am going to give you this product at the end, okay? And if you have any of those are products at the end that have to be applicable, they have to be readily used, okay? So that's the next one. You can go for state and local government. Usually those are on contract basis. So they'll want something done and they'll give you a contract that you have to fulfill. And then there's foundations, and there's a ton of money in foundations, but each one has a specialized mission. So you have to understand what the foundation is looking for, and then you can get the money that you want in the foundation. Foundations are real, they're almost personal. The rest of these are more governmental, so they're a little impersonal. Foundations, you know, and I've probably gotten, I don't know how much money out of foundations, at least $500,000, maybe 600,000, things like that. But one time I had to sit on the phone and talk to the program guy for an hour about his retirement, his kids, all kinds of stuff like that. You have to develop a personal relationship with the people at the foundation if you want to get foundation money, okay? And you handle them different. They are people. You handle them like personal relationships. The rest of them you don't. You don't have to. You don't have to send them notes and give them updates and things like that. They basically, it's all stock when it comes to government stuff. These guys, it's not. It's personal, okay? And keep that in mind or you blow it. So, first time I started with, I blew it because I thought they were the same. They're not. Okay, so proposal preparation. Here's how you want to do it to write a real good proposal. You got to read that solicitation carefully. Everything in that solicitation has to be there, you know. This past one we had this one proposal which everybody thought was great, and it didn't have a dissemination plan in it. And I said, it doesn't have a dissemination plan, and it got knocked down. Just because it didn't have a dissemination, which is a small part, but still you got to make sure you got that dissemination plan in there. So every part you want to put in there and see exactly what they're looking for, because that panel, we're looking for anything that's wrong, okay? Give yourself plenty of time to do this. Do not rush these things. They have to be perfect. You know, I mean, you know what the rate is on research grants for NSF or NIH? About 7%. That's the success rate. So you are competing with people from MIT and Caltech and Harvard and Princeton and Yale and Stanford and all those great places, and only 7% are going to get funded. So it is difficult. So make sure you don't shoot yourself in the foot. Organization is the key. Make sure you keep yourself extremely well organized as you prep this thing. Use that. What I do, and this is a hint I will tell you, is I go in, I open it up on that website, I just grab the entire proposed, you know, when it gives you the project description, how to put it together, I just grab the whole thing, I throw it into my Word document, I strip everything out, so I have the exact headings that they asked for. I don't try to change them, I don't do anything. I make sure, because I've been on the panel, and we just look for things. And if it's not there, then we just go, I guess they didn't do it. Whereas if the heading is there, you make it easy on those panel people, and they go, oh, there it is. This is exactly here's how I'm supposed to score it. There's the thing that I'm looking for. And you put in everything in there that says, oh, you should score it on this. Make sure you have it right there and right out in their face so nobody misses it. Because, you know, look, we had to review 20 proposals. You know, and they wait a day and a half to review 20 proposals that I just got back from. You know, how much time when you have to go through 20 proposals, how much time do you really have to put in a lot of detail to look for stuff? You know? So it's you make it so that someone's going to miss it, and they'll miss it. Okay? So you don't want to do that. Subhead where appropriate. As I said, it's better that the headings are sitting right out there. People like to write these long prose. You miss everything in that. Where if it's got a heading in there, a subheading, it says, oh, okay, there's the, you know, previous support. There's, you know, where the expenditures are going to go. There's the timetable. All those kinds of things where you want to have it. Be complete. Everything for a reason. Do not throw statements in that don't have a reason, that don't have some backup on them. Everything you put in that proposal has to link in on itself. You don't want things just hanging out there. You know what I mean? It's where it just hangs out. Oh yeah, by the way, we're going to collect this data. Why? You know, make sure everything that you're going to do links back into the reason for doing it. Review, reread, rewrite. So you got to look at this a bunch of times. I think I put this content, okay, as we said, why are you the best person to do it? Why? Okay, so you better justify why you're the best person to do that. Why is this best situation? Why? Why did you decide to study the Appalachian Mountains instead of the Himalayas? Why is it better? So you better tell them why this spot is actually better than those others. Best thing to do is to give them expected findings and what they mean. So this one person, as I said, it was a good friend of mine who was on who was at NSF for a while. I said the best ones are when it says, oh, if I find this result, it'll mean this, and then I need to test that. If I find that result, it'll mean this. So if you can tell them, already spec out what you're going to find and what it'll mean if you find this or that, those are the ways. Oh, he said those are the ones everyone reads them and says, wow, that's great. So those are the ones that do the best. Cite the literature. Suppose you're, I don't know what you're looking at. You were looking on genetics of something, and the person who is on the panel and wrote some big thing and you don't cite it. What do you think they're going to do once it comes to their time to give you a ranking? So make sure that you cover everybody who's a big shot and could possibly be on that panel, or if it's literature that's that's well accepted in the field and you don't have it on there, they say, what the heck, you don't even know that this is one of the best papers in the field? Make sure you cite all that literature. Okay, so the writing. I added this in. This is kind of similar to a talk I've given before, so as far as I go, when it comes to writing a proposal, about 1 month full time. Okay, so make sure you allot enough time that you can write that whole thing up. Plan to finish a month before it's due. Do not put it off right to the last minute and say, oh, I'll just, a month before it's due. As you write everything, you put in a logical order. You start going back and forth on things, and people will think that, oh, it's not written well. You don't really know what you're doing. Make sure everything's logical. Everything flows from one step to the next. Plain and simple English. Do not try to impress them with your English abilities. Writing something simple and straightforward is a real skill. So don't ever downgrade that. If I'm not using, double compound sentences and long words, people don't appreciate that. So make sure especially you got to kind of look at it this way. If you're describing something complicated, you put it in simple English and they'll understand it. You put complicated stuff with complicated writing, nobody gets what the heck you're talking about. And the most important thing, as I said, I had to read 20 proposals and discuss them in a day and a half. That's a lot. Easier for me to understand it, the higher the rating I give it. So, it's plain and simple. Support all your statements fully. Don't leave things hanging, as I said before. Make sure you have everything supported. No extra activities that we're going to do this in addition. Everything is a nicely tight package. Ask other people to read it. Okay, so once you get that done a month ahead of time, see if you can find somebody who will read. You're asking the government to give you a lot of money, and you got a lot of other people there competing for it. You got to make sure that thing sparkles. Okay, so that's why you want, when you're done with it, people should just see, wow, this is a pleasure to read. That's what you want by the time you're ready to submit it. Okay, as I said, I start writing, I go after big grants now, but I start writing 6 months ahead of time. 6 months. And I will write all the way up until the last month or two, and then I'll spread it out and let everybody else send me back their comments, and then I send it in. That's the way I write my proposals. 6 months ahead, sometimes more, but at least 6 months ahead of time, that's when I start writing. So make sure you give yourself plenty of time to get these things up to really being good. Okay, one of the other things you have on these that you might want to start thinking about early is that these are what are called broader impact. And if you write an NSF proposal, you'd write a summary statement, you write something called intellectual merit, basically what the intellectual part of it is, and then there's a broader impact. And the broader impact is because the government over the years started getting into all of this science or whatever else you're into, where they just kind of focused on the science, they started to drift so far from the general public that people didn't understand what was going on. And you have probably heard of, maybe over the past few years, the complaints from people in the Senate and House about why we're wasting our money doing research on these certain topics, and why do we need to know this for? So the broader impact, basically, it connects it back to the general population. And the more complicated we get in our science, the more important it's becoming to connect back. So I am just telling you now to make sure that you are way up on those broader impacts, because they make or break things these days. I mean, the old days they were just kind of add-ons. As we go along, they become more and more important. Okay, so basically you need to connect it to education, to the community, see what you're doing about how it's helping the United States, and you want to connect to everything that's available to you at the time. So there are a lot of things that are available to you that are at the time. Now, science these days is a problem because the diversity in STEM fields is bad, okay? And so, to be able to connect that to any kind of diversity initiative is a good thing, okay? Because as I said, if you look at the stuff, like geology where I am, the diversity is like 8% for bachelor's degrees, whereas, what is it, up around 30% really are underrepresented minorities, and we're at 8%, so a lot of these places are doing really poorly in terms of diversity, and in the future we need to diversify our STEM community. So therefore, that's why they're very up on this stuff. Okay, so the submission of these things, you want to submit early. Do not wait till the last day. And Joe said they got to have that 5-day window. Try to get it in a week before it's due. Have it submitted a week ahead of time. These are all electronically submitted. You press that button to submit it, something is wrong, it's going to kick back. And they're going to say, you're missing this part. This isn't here. That's not done. This isn't done. And it's going to come back, and then the people at the research office are going to come back in touch with you and say, hey, you're missing these parts. We can't submit it. You really want that on the last day? No. You want that ahead of time, so in case something goes wrong, you don't have to trash your entire 6 months of effort. Okay, so do it early. IRBs, you got to think about these ahead of time. I just got myself, I'm having a headache of a nightmare on IRBs. Institutional Review Board. If you're going to use any human subjects or anything like that, or any animal, any of that stuff, it all has to be approved. So I just got a grant passed in August, $2.6 million. I have not been able to spend a penny of it. I used to have a full head of hair before this started. Anyway, so it's a nightmare. So do that early. There are data management plans, and are you guys going to go over data management plans here? Not at all?
If there's interest, we're happy to do workshops about data management plans during the semester.
Okay.
We do have a data skills bootcamp tomorrow and Friday, but that's not necessarily the plans. So the plans are a little bit different. Feel free to email me if you're interested in a data management plan.
They are required on NSF proposals. So, and there's a whole system at Rutgers on archiving and things like that, goes through the library system. So, if you get all that, you should get all that stuff ahead. And I talked to Joe about, we really should have kind of a boilerplate for that, so that everybody can just go in and pull it up. When I was vice chancellor, I wanted to get a boilerplate so people would know what's available to them. But you have to put together a data management plan, and all your information has to be collected a certain way and archived a certain way, and it is available through the library system here. So, budget, you're going to have to do. People on the board, budget, everybody goes crazy here at Rutgers, and they will, so you have to do a good budget. When you get to NSF, they don't really care. We don't really care that much. We don't even look, nobody even bothers to look at it for the most part. So, but here, you got to work with Joe on getting that on the budget. It has to be done just right, and it's a pain in the neck. Okay, everything has to be submitted by the research office when it comes to these federal grants. You cannot submit it directly except for certain parts, and there's an endorsement form through the RAP system. So now, it used to be a separate form, now it's through RAPS, which is lots of fun, you'll see. Okay, post-submission. First thing is, forget about it. If you sit there and start worrying about that grant proposal you submitted, you are going to have a lot of sleepless nights. These things take 6 months at least, and as I said, the odds are about 7% that you'll get it. So basically, I send my proposals in and I say, it's out of my hair. I don't even think about them again. I move on to something new because it's so hard to get money. It's so hard to get started. You just keep hitting it and hitting it and hitting it, and just after you put it in, you forget about it. So, as I said, funding is terrible for everybody, so don't sweat it. Start moving to the next thing. You can't submit the same proposal to 2 different agencies. You have to ensure that you are submitting it only to one agency. Now, do you ever have to worry about getting funded twice for the same project? If you do, that's a good joke. Because you're never gonna, getting it once funded, it's like getting hit by lightning. It's like getting hit by lightning twice in a row or something. So you really can try to multiple submit them, but you have to switch them around a little bit because you have to ensure that you're not submitting the same thing twice, okay? Learn from mistakes. They will send you a panel review. I've just put together 20 panel reviews, and in addition to the reviews by each individual reviewer. So you will get feedback, and you read that feedback carefully, okay? Because that's going to tell you how to fix it for the next time you put it in. And you will have to do it more than once. Just be used to it. I can give a little talk on this. It has timing on this. Up to you on timing. I put this in as well.
Sure thing. Go for it.
Our
Don't let
GRFP?
me take away from
Okay,
great
so,
advice.
all right, so I'm just going to give you a quick on graduate. So a lot of things you can't apply for. Because you're not a PhD. In an NSF, you have to have a PhD to apply for in science, to be a science person, to get a grant. Otherwise, you're going to be co-PI. That's life. Okay, so, but there is one thing you can apply for, and I don't know how many of you are like in your first year at graduate school? A couple. Okay, how many of you are just beginning a second year? So, talk for all you people who've been here a while, you can kind of relax and not pay attention to this. But what I will tell you is this is the biggest program at the National Science Foundation. It's called the Graduate Research Fellowship Program, GRFP. This is the biggest, has most money of any of the programs. Okay, and this one you can apply as graduate students, and I encourage you to apply. Okay, this is a really good deal. They get, depending on the year, they will give out 2,000 to 2,500 fellowships across the United States. And this is up, it's now $34,000 a year they will give you, cover your tuition for 3 years. So this is $34,000. I actually got one of my undergraduates one of these last year. Okay, they've upped it. You can take it to any school you want. And you basically you now can fund your own stuff. Anybody in the world will take you. They all love these things. Okay, so these are great. Looks wonderful on the resume. Okay, because these are highly prestigious things. So if you have an opportunity to go for GRFP, I would at least try. Okay, so here's the basics. Get on the NSF website. There's the solicitation. Typically, they're due in November. Okay, and you can only do them at certain times. After a certain point, you can't do it. There is in 2 parts. You have a personal statement and a research statement. You will have to put in your transcripts. You will have to put in letters, 3 letters of reference, and it doesn't have to go through the research office. So you will send that directly to NSF from your computer, not research office. Okay, so personal statement you want to write first. Okay, and the personal statement, just here's a couple of things of what you want to do. You want to have started in college, okay? So do not start to, and a lot of people will start, well, ever since when I was 5 years old, I went to my grandfather's farm and I loved to walk in the stream. All well and good, nobody wants to hear it. And by the way, I served on this 4 times I didn't serve on it this year, I served on it last year and 3 previous years. So I've been a panelist for this a bunch of times. Everything you did on purpose. Well, you know, I took organic chemistry and I only got a D, so I thought maybe, well, you know, maybe medicine's not for me, so I went into this instead. Wrong, okay? Everything you did on purpose. I took this background in organic chemistry because I wanted it to help me to do the next step, okay? Nothing by mistake, nothing you screwed up, none of that stuff. Everything you did from the moment you stepped foot on this planet, you did on purpose, okay? Include intellectual merit, just like I just talked about, and broader impacts. You need those broader impacts. This is very important to these things. You want to have everything build in your personal statement to address your proposed research, your research project. Or everything you did up to that point helped it so that you can do this research project. And you want to include what you're going to do for the rest of your career. Okay, and of course, well, these are all reviewed by faculty members, so guess what they like most, okay? So you want to put that in, make sure you say, ooh, I want to be a faculty member. Right, anyway. So that's what you want to put in. All right, so your research statement, you write it like a research proposal, okay? You want to have an introduction, a purpose, objective, test to be run, expected outcomes, and importance. All that stuff like you were going to write a research project. You want it all subheaded, everything that you want to go along with it. Here's the big thing with the research project. So, you know, when I was on this last one, they were giving me proposals on lightning in the upper atmosphere. They gave me one on coral, you know, reproduction in temperature differences and things like that. Guess what? I've never taken a meteorology course in my life in college. I never took a biology course in my life in college, and I was reviewing these things. So if you think that this has to be cutting edge, no. It just has to be written well. It has to be with a good, you know, idea and a purpose, and then how am I going to solve this? They're looking at, basically they're going to look to see if you know how to be a scientist. That's what it's about. It's not that you have to be doing the most impressive cutting-edge stuff in the world, because most of the people reviewing it have no clue what the heck you're talking about. How's that? Now that's a big thing for you to know, because if I had told everyone, oh, well, you got to be up on the current literature and stuff, it doesn't even matter. The stuff I reviewed, they could have taken they could have pulled it out of a textbook, for Pete's sakes, written up that's what they wanted to do, and I wouldn't have known one thing from the other. How's that? You know, or they could have taken the most popular paper and given it to me. I wouldn't have had any clue. How's that? So it really doesn't matter whether the stuff you're doing is so cutting edge. I mean, you have to have a professional grade stuff, a real research topic. But it doesn't matter if it's really something fantastic or not, because I have no clue whether it is or isn't. And most of the people who are reviewing it don't. So therefore, when you write these, don't worry about whether you're cutting edge or not. Just make sure you have a good research topic that everybody will say, oh, that sounds so interesting. That's what you want. Make sure your courses matches your expertise. If you say, oh, yes, on this I'm going to do some mass spectrometry, and you have never had a course in anything with dealing with mass spectrometry, they're going to go, well, how are you going to do that if you have no clue how to do it? So make sure your courses that you're on, because they're going to see your transcripts, make sure they match. Oh, I'm going to do advanced, quantitative analysis on this, and all you've taken is Calc 1. Well, you kind of have to make everything match. Okay, include broader impacts and how you continue science dissemination efforts as a graduate student. Broader impacts are big. This is half of the time, as I just told you, they're giving me stuff I have no clue about. So everybody then kind of hones in on those broader impacts, and they say, ooh, well, is this person doing some outreach with science? And so therefore, they become really important. It's probably 40% of the decision is made on whether you did good broader impacts. I was the president of the club for, whatever as an undergraduate. As a graduate student, I helped tutor kids. I ran this for the department, I did that. And especially if you can do stuff with diversity, it's important. And right here at Rutgers Newark, you have a very big opportunity to make your broader impacts look really strong. Now, when you go and you write real research grants in the future, those broader impacts are going to have to be in that too. So if you get a little experience while you're here at Rutgers Newark, the most diverse research university in the United States for 18 consecutive years, it looks good. Okay, so if you can start getting involved in broader impact efforts, and I got plenty of stuff you guys get involved in if you want to talk to me on this campus, you're better off. It's great use of that stuff. Don't let it bite into your time that you're going to do your research, but if you have a little bit extra time in there that you can get this stuff built in, I got plenty of opportunities for you guys to do stuff that'll really make you look good. Okay? All right. That's where the diversity is important. Okay. Some hints. When you're gonna do you got your research statement, your personal statement. You pick a reference. Make sure you send it to them ahead of time. So when they write your reference, they say, ooh, this person knows exactly how to do that stuff, and they're really on the cutting edge of that. As opposed to them writing, oh yeah, they were a great person, da 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 da. You want them to make it so that they can say something about your research, okay? And maybe even your personal statement. It'll help, okay? Be complete. Don't leave things out. If you went to I have it back there. You went to a community college, don't not put the transcripts in there, okay? So people, a lot of times they'll go to community college and then they'll go to a 4-year school and they'll leave out the transcripts. Gotta have them all, so make sure everything is in there. Everything should be complete. Submit early. Once again, you want to get it ahead of time. If there's a problem and they say, ooh, you're missing this or this isn't right, you want to have the ability to fix it. If you have good GRE scores, they're not required on the application, but ask one of your references to mention them, okay? Because you want to get some credit for that. And here you go. Many reviewers will not have the background in your area and will focus on broader impacts. So keep that in mind. Next. Okay, so broader impacts. Participate before you apply, so you need to be participating now. We got opportunities with our LSAMP here. LSAMP is the Lewis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation. We are the head of it for New Jersey, Garden State. And so we have all kinds of opportunities for you to be involved with STEM students who are from a diverse background. And there's all kinds of other things that we can get you involved in if you want to work with that. Those are good things to put in your broader impact, whether it's for this or whether your other stuff. You want to make sure that you say that you can tell people how you are going to be because you are now as elite in terms of scholarly activity. And so how am I going to include the rest of the world and bridge that gap between them and me, and the science or the whatever scholarly area you're in. That's what you want to do. So we have lots of opportunities. You can come and talk to me about those. I can put you in touch with the right people. If you're in sciences, I'm mostly just the STEM stuff I can get you involved in. But there's all kinds of opportunities around here that will really make you look good. And that's what you want in the long run. That's it. Okay. Thanks.